Interesting part for me is that every morning when I wake up, I look at the front pages of the local newspapers, Star, Globe, whatever, and I know what I'm going to be talking about that day. It is a wonderful privilege to be able to influence the direction of our country and to participate, particularly at the government level, in the influencing of our government direction. Pick your policy. For me, the most interesting part of being a member of Parliament was when I was in the Department of Finance. We wrestled the deficit to the ground, we ran surpluses, and we then were able to enter into the Kelowna Agreement, the Kyoto Agreement, an agreement with our Aboriginal nations, and that was really a lot of not only fun, but it was direction setting for our nation. And regrettably, we've lost that direction in the last 10 years. So I'm running with Mr. Trudeau in order to be able to reassert Canada's position in the world, but also to reassert our relationships with each other, which have been largely based in fear in the last few years. And I hope that you will consider that very carefully when you're thinking about voting. Thank you.
Running for office is certainly not just an individual pursuit. It's about representing the community and looking for solutions to some of the challenges in society. I got involved in politics out of frustration because when I graduated from university, I had a massive student debt, like many of you will face in coming years. And I was frustrated with the lack of leadership with our sitting governments to do anything to mitigate the rising cost of tuition, which has tripled in Ontario in the last 20 years. And it doesn't have to be like that, because you can look at Quebec, and they pay about half as much as tuition as we do in Ontario. And then that's when I, through my studies at U of T Scarborough, I realized that meaningful change can be achieved through politics, through legislation, and that's why I'm running with the New Democratic Party.
Well, Laura is running for the New Democrats, and I'm running for the True Democrats. The reason why I'm here is very simple. I'm here because of all of you. I have seen poverty firsthand. And I do not wish you young people to face that. I realize that this generation of people living in poverty will be over for these people sometime. And someone has to inherit that. That's you, young people. I have lost a large amount of friends through homelessness, through drugs and alcoholism. This generation of those who are victim of homelessness, drugs, and alcoholism, their time will be done, and the next generation, which is you, will replace them if someone does not do something about it. My opponents will sit down on the job. I will stand up for you. I will stand up against poverty. I will stand up against abuse authority, and I will stand up to Trudeau, Beauclair, and Harper, and I will give the people and you an independent voice in the House of Commons. That's why I'm here. God is with us.
Thank you very much. Okay, so students, be reminded you can come up here to ask a question. We encourage you all to ask questions. Please don't be afraid. We will not judge you for your questions. So we're going to do another question. I'll wait for some more students to come on up.
Toronto's transit system is a joke. From very crowded subway cars moving slowly on old tracks to overcrowded buses and streetcars, Toronto needs to renew the TTC and expand it into places like Scarborough. What will you do to make sure that happens?
Well, we've taken a very strong position on the Scarborough subway. All 6 Scarborough Liberal candidates have endorsed the Scarborough subway as, if you will, the first step in repairing some of the awful transit we have in this country. Mr. Trudeau has, unlike any of the other parties, set aside a $60 billion infrastructure fund, 1/3 of which is devoted to green, another third of which is devoted to infrastructure. Out of that infrastructure fund, I would expect that we can do a number of things, Scarborough subway being one of them, grade separations at Galloway Road and Morningside Avenue and Poplar Road and Scarborough Golf Club Road, in order that the GO train can be electrified. And if the GO train is electrified, it too can become a far more frequent service than once every half hour. So those are sort of practical things that would come down from a federal government which appropriately funded the municipal government, which ultimately has a responsibility for the organization of transportation.
Got a fan, John. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So now I remember I'm still a transit rider myself. I have a monthly TTC pass. I have ridden the buses in Scarborough all my life. I can't believe the conditions of the roads these days when riding the 54 Lawrence or a bus on Ellesmere. It feels like you're riding a bus on a country road. And, you know, I think if wealthy people had to ride those buses every day, those roads would be fixed. The NDP believes in long-term, predictable, stable funding for the City of Toronto, and we've committed $7.7 billion out of our budget specifically to Toronto Transit, and Tom O'Kerr has produced a specific strategy to get the people of Toronto moving, because I as a transit rider myself, I understand what it's like you know, to try to get from one place to another, especially when you're moving across the city. Thank you.
Transit. Up in Vaughan, there is a man named Stephen DeLuca. He is our transportation minister. I ran Phil Sarrazin, one of my former intern party leader, up there against him. We would look to speak to Mr. DeLuca about what Ontario can do to improve transit. Now, Mayor Tory, you know, God bless his soul, he is doing a pretty good job, except for the fact he's not focusing on social issues. But he can't do it all by himself. Tory inherited a terrible transit system, and we need some accountability, and we need people to make our supervisors and those who are higher up in our transit system more responsible and more accountable. The fact of the matter is, no matter what the problems we have with the Toronto Transit Commission, we do have a great transit system. So let's build on what's good of our great transit system, and let's rid the abuse in the system and make it more safer for people to ride. My focus is safety, and that's where I'm concerned with. God is with us, but don't worry, I believe in you kids, and you kids will fix all our problems when the time comes.
Okay, now we have a lineup of students waiting. You can come up to ask your questions.
Okay, both the NDP and Liberal parties say in their federal platforms that they're going to increase jobs. But what kind of jobs are you going to be creating? Is it part-time, full-time? Is it more people working minimum wage at McDonald's? Or is it actual middle-class jobs that will help sustain the economy?
Thank you. Very good question.
Excellent question. You'll notice that Mr. Trudeau, in the debates with Mr. Harper and Mr. Mulcair, emphasized that this is the time to invest in Canada. Interest rates are low, we have a relatively high unemployment, labor is available, we are transitioning into a post-carbon economy, therefore the economy is shifting from Alberta to elsewhere. This is a golden opportunity, and Mr. Trudeau has said two things of critical importance. One, he will run deficits, short-term deficits, in order to jumpstart the economy. Two, he will apply a $60 billion to infrastructure funding, 19.7 of which is to infrastructure for transit, and another 19.7 for green infrastructure jobs. That in and of itself has a multiplier throughout the economy, and I'm rather hoping that by the time you guys get to the workforce, you will be exposed to an economy that is firing on all cylinders instead of flat like it is right now.
So it was actually Tom Mulcair a few years ago who said we need to stop funding the oil sands and reinvest into good manufacturing jobs, into green technology, because Canadian economy was missing out. And it was Tom Mulcair who said that a few years ago, and he predicted that when the oil sand prices went down, thousands of jobs would be lost, and that's what's happening right now in Alberta. So Tom Mulcair, we do not believe in running deficits, because you know what, that's going to come back on our generation here. And you know what, who's going to have to pay that back? Our generation is going to have to pay that back eventually. So we believe in asking corporations to pay their fair share. We're going to stop the CEO tax loopholes, and we're going to ask the wealthiest people to pay their fair share so we can reinvest into good manufacturing jobs. Clean tech. Tom Mulcair was an environment minister in Quebec. He strongly believes in putting money into clean tech, sustainable economies. And beyond that as well, the NDP does believe that we need to boost the living wage in this country, and we're going to start by introducing a $15 federal minimum wage.
It's one thing to create a $15 minimum wage, but if there ain't no job to go to, you ain't gonna get that $15, are you? Right? So, with the People's Political Party of Ontario, I created a program with a man named Sam Colas. He is the 10th richest man in Canada, and he is the owner of Broadwalk Property Management. We put together a program called YES, Youth Employment Strategy. So the way our program works is that the Ontario government gives a rebate to individuals who contribute time to an Ontario political party. So we have the young people contribute time, and through Sam's assistance, we give them a portion where they can make a pay, and they can contribute their time. They contribute a certain amount of hours. At the end of the year, we give them a tax receipt, and upon filing their taxes, they get a one-time rebate from the Ontario government. That's one of the things I'm doing. We also look to give youth the power they need, give them opportunities. I believe that a lot of individuals have great ideas out there for all different types of small business and all different types of job creation, and I would open the door for them to express those ideas. In job creation, I would rely on the young people to create more jobs and more opportunities. You're independent. Vote independent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clarke.
God is with us.
Hold back. Thank you very much, Mr. Clarke. Sorry. Mr. Clarke, sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you. So next, can we have our next question come up? Thank you.
Okay, glad to have you guys here today. So my question for you is, what are you doing about our healthcare system? I know we're ranked 10th best for having the best healthcare system in the world, yet we spend the most amount of money after USA. Countries such as Japan and Taiwan are ranked higher than us, yet they spend only half the money we spend on healthcare. So what are you going to do to fix this problem, and how are you planning to ease the tension between federal and provincial parties when it comes to healthcare funding?
Excellent question. Thank you very much.
Excellent question again. The relationship between the federal government and the provincial government is what comes into question here. The federal government a properly constituted federal government does two things. One, it writes this massive check to the provinces to administer the healthcare system, and I think the last number was $36 billion. And the second thing it does is it sets national standards. In the last 10 years, Mr. Harper has written the check and walked away from it. So we have 10 10 fiefdoms of healthcare, and each fiefdom doesn't necessarily adhere to the best standards, the best that we can be doing. We compare ourselves to the United States and say, well, see, they're spending 16% of their GDP on healthcare. That is like trying to say you're a hockey player but still playing for the Maple Leafs. You guys know the Maple Leafs, don't you? Canada spends 8 to 9% of its GDP, and it should be spending about 7 or 8% of its GDP. A lot of it is lost in inefficiencies, redundancies, and unnecessary expectations on the part of the doctors and the healthcare system. So I would propose that if Mr. Trudeau is the Prime Minister, that we go back to the expectations and setting of standards so that we all get the high quality health care that we deserve right across this country for the proper amount of money.
It's a really great question. And part of the NDP approach is not looking about how we can necessarily spend more money on the healthcare system, but how we can use it more efficiently. And part of our approach is looking into preventative ways how we can do that. The NDP is proposing expanding funds for the provinces for home health care. And what that means is home health care, especially for seniors, it means they have more consistent care at the home. When do people go to the hospital? When they're really, really sick, right? So we want to get to them before they have to go to the hospital, because it actually costs more money to keep sick people in the hospital than it does in providing and facilitating home care. We also want to do a national pharmacare strategy. It's the missing piece of the puzzle in the Canadian healthcare system. And what that, one advantage to having a national strategy is that the country, Canada, we can buy prescription drugs in bulk. And that saves the provinces millions of dollars, because right now they're buying individually on a provincial basis. It's like when you go to Costco, you buy in bulk, you save a lot of money, right? So those are some of the ways that we can increase the efficiencies in the healthcare system.
Well, as you know, I am the founder of one of the 22 political parties in Ontario, the People's Political Party. And healthcare is a provincial issue, and we do have a new leader, John J. Martins, who succeeded me as the new leader of the party. And we will address that issue with Kathleen Wynne and with Patrick Brown from the opposition and Ms. Horvath. The big issue I find with healthcare is that we have a large wait time. I wish to reduce wait time, so I will push towards that. The second issue I find is that our healthcare system no longer focuses on the patient as first priority. The first priority is to see that the hospital or whoever is performing the service gets paid. I want to take a lot of the paperwork out of our healthcare system and put more focus on the patients and those individuals who need the service. So that's how we will fix healthcare in Ontario, and we will do our best. But we also, again, look for you young people to give us the lead and the direction. God is with us.
Okay, next question asker, please make your way up.
A lot of the funding for the Canadian pension plan is being cut. Where is this money going, and how is it benefiting the people of Canada?